Have you ever been afraid? I know I have. Sometimes I'm afraid of a thunderstorm when the lightning strikes and it's so loud, or when the wind outside is howling and the branches of the trees outside are brushing up against the house and scratching and making noises. Or maybe I'm just afraid when it's dark in my bedroom at night and all of the cars going by are making weird lights on the wall. Or maybe I'm afraid because there's something I've seen that's scary, maybe a scary movie, or I read a book about a scary character. There are always times when we're scared, right? There's all kinds of times when we could be afraid. What do we do when we're afraid? Do you hide? I know when I was younger, I used to hide under my blankets at night when it was dark in my room. Sometimes I'd turn a nightlight on when it was dark to help me not be so afraid. Sometimes we run when we're afraid, right? If we see something that we're afraid of and we run away from it, right? We've seen people do that too. What about fight? There's a reaction in our bodies called fight or flight. And flight is when we want to run away. But fight is when we stop and we face it. And we might be still afraid, but we fight for what? Turn around and fight what we're afraid of. Sometimes we might even scream. Have you ever come around the corner and somebody was there you weren't expecting and you let out a big scream? Yeah, because you were so startled you weren't expecting that person to be there. I've done that. We all have those times when we're afraid. And there was a point in time when the disciples were truly afraid. And I'm going to read you that story right now from Matthew chapter 14, starting at verse 22. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land. It was being buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiping him said, "Truly you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of the place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched were healed. You see, even the disciples were afraid. And Jesus didn't deny that they were afraid. He knew they were afraid. But he said to them, "You don't need to be afraid because it's me. It's me here on the water. Trust me, I'm here." And when Peter got out to walk on the water, he got even more scared. And Jesus said, "Why were you afraid? I was right here. Why did you doubt that I wouldn't protect you and keep you safe?" Sometimes we can feel like that, can't we? When we're in our homes and it's dark in our rooms, we can be afraid, right? Or maybe we saw a scary movie and it's really hard to stay in bed, isn't it? Because we're afraid of what monsters or scary things might be peeking around the corner. Did you know that when we're afraid, we can always call on God? we can just say a quick prayer. God be with me. And we can breathe and let it out. Just like when we talked about being angry, we can do the same thing when we're afraid. And we can have compassion for ourselves. Maybe there's something we can do to have a little bit more faith that Jesus is always there watching us. Whether it's saying a prayer or getting a nightlight, or maybe talking about it with our moms and dads, because they might have some insight that we might not have just yet. And so they might be able to help us with our fears. Today, I thought it would be fun for each of you in your own homes to set up an obstacle course. And we're going to do that here and pretend like we're walking on water just like Jesus called Peter to do. So let's go have some fun. The floor is lava. Over the bench. Through the cones. And under the maze of string.